Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast, where we explore the mindset, skill set, and habit set of leadership communication. Using these tips, techniques, and tactics, you'll be able to talk like a leader to build better relationships and get more done. Your host is Guy Harris, who has more than 20 years of combined professional and military experience in consulting, coaching, and training in areas like team and interaction dynamics, communication strategies and tactics, as well as emotional intelligence. Take it away, Guy.
Hi, this is Guy Harris. Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about the difference between head mistakes and heart mistakes. Now, honestly, the topic for today is probably more of a general leadership idea than a specifically leadership communication idea. I'm going to suggest that it plays into leadership communication because it affects the way you engage with others. It can affect your body language, your tone, the unintended messages you send, those kind of things. So let's talk about the difference between head mistakes and heart mistakes. Well, the first idea is that a head mistake is basically something where we unintentionally did something. We didn't think of something, or the other person didn't think of something. An idea or an action didn't occur to someone, or someone missed a detail in evaluating a problem, or overlooked a potential solution, something like that. It's just they weren't thinking clearly at the time, or their focus was distracted, or they saw it a different way. It's more of a behavior mistake than an intention mistake kind of idea. And then there are heart mistakes, which really get down to our intent. Did we mean to do the thing we did? In which case, it might not necessarily be a mistake, other than maybe a moral failure of some kind, moral or ethical failure. It's a matter of heart, not a matter of head. I give you some examples just so we can make sure we're clear about what I'm talking about here. If we're putting a meeting together and we put our meeting list together and we're trying to include everyone who is directly affected by the meeting or has relevant information for the meeting, and we forget to include someone. We just don't remember that they are affected by the outcome or that they have information, or we don't realize it and we don't invite them to the meeting. Well, that's a head mistake. We just forgot to invite them or overlooked the idea that they should have been invited. If we think about them and intentionally leave them out because we just don't want them there, they're directly affected by the outcome of the meeting or have relevant information, that's more of a heart mistake. We chose to leave someone out who was relevant to the meeting. Here's another one, a little different situation. Say you're staying in a hotel, you go down and get a drink from the drink area, and you look for the person behind the counter to have them charge it to your room, and there's nobody around. You get tired of waiting, so you go back to your room and say, well, I'll tell them later. If you just forget to tell them later, well, that's a head mistake. If you decide, it's only $2 or $3, and compared to the charge of the hotel room, it's not that much, and frankly, if they'd wanted to get charged, if they wanted to get paid for this drink, they should have been there to take the transaction. Not my fault the drinks are left there for anybody to take. I choose not to pay them. That's a heart mistake. And so the idea here is to remember that there are head mistakes and there are heart mistakes. They have different implications. They have different remedies. And there are two sides to this. There's one side is when you make a mistake, and then there's the side when another person makes a mistake. So let's look at each of those briefly. When you make a mistake, I guess what I'd advise you is, make sure it's a head mistake, not a heart mistake. Make sure your mindset's in the right direction. Make sure you have no malicious intent. Make sure you're not trying to deceive someone. Make sure you're not trying to manipulate someone, that kind of thing. And then if you make a mistake while you're trying to do the right thing, that's a head mistake. And the way we fix that is we own it, we apologize, and we figure out what we can do to fix it. And hopefully we move on. And when you make a mistake of this kind, beware of a tendency that many people have is to kind of beat yourself up because you made a mistake. It's just a head mistake. We all make them. It's really okay. We don't want to make too many, and we're all going to make some. So if it's a head mistake, it's okay. Own it, apologize, do something to fix it, and move on. And if it's a heart mistake, that's a different question. You want to evaluate, am I trying to manipulate people? Am I trying to use my skills or my position to get my way rather than to do what's best for the team? That's a different issue. Now, when someone else makes a mistake, remember that it's a very common tendency Probably not everybody on the planet. A lot of people, though, will tend to judge ourselves by our intent or our heart, and will judge others by their behaviors, what we see externally. And what we tend to assume is that their behaviors reflect their heart, and they may or may not. So we tend to assume other people's mistakes are heart mistakes rather than head mistakes. And the way to stay out of trouble here is to remember this idea I've talked about in previous episodes, the idea of benign intent. When we see someone make a mistake, let's assume it's a head mistake rather than a heart mistake. And granted, a head mistake or heart mistake probably has the same direct impact on you in terms of leaving you out of a meeting or not getting information to you or causing a problem of some kind. In terms of the impact of the mistake, it's probably the same. The key is, as a leader, to keep yourself in a state of mind or state of emotional control so you can deal with the situation in a productive and healthy way rather than an emotional offhand sort of way, like losing control of your temper, saying something you didn't mean because you got angry, that kind of thing, making a decision that you regret later because you were angry. So we assume it's a head mistake. This is the idea of benign intent. I'll also even acknowledge that too many head mistakes can't become a problem. If we consistently make mistakes, then we have to wonder, is this person qualified for the position, or do they have the skills or attention to detail necessary? That's a completely different discussion, not what I'm talking about now. I'm talking about the one-off person made a mistake and we're trying to get past it. So the way you deal with it when it's another person's mistake is you assume it's a head mistake, you have a conversation with the person, you use assertive communication skills like we've talked about in other places and in this podcast, and you talk to them about the mistake and look for a remedy in a non-judgmental, non-critical way. We talk about the mistake, talk about the impact of the mistake, and we talk about the solution. And frankly, we want to spend more time talking about the solution than about the mistake. We want to spend more time moving forward than looking backward. So if you can do this, recognize the difference between head mistakes and heart mistakes. Work to fix head mistakes as much as possible. Work to head off your own heart mistakes and beware of a tendency to judge that others made heart mistakes when it was just a head mistake. If you can do that, you can keep your mind in a calm, clear place where you can solve problems, communicate clearly and effectively, and you can talk like a leader. This has been the Talk Like a Leader podcast. You can listen to this show every week wherever you get your podcast. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Guy Harris, and thanks for listening.